Thursday session of Talk with Wayne. And if you guys are just joining, we are going to get started here in a minute. So once again, thank you for joining. Welcome everybody to our Thursday session Talk with Wayne podcast. We're going to get started here in a minute. And there's a chance that Wayne won't be joining us today. There's a chance that uh, there won't be a live session today. In that case, we will show you a replay. We'll show you a replay of a previous session. So thank you once again for joining, and we're going to get started in just a minute. We are waiting for Wayne to get connected. In case he cannot get coverage, if he doesn't have internet coverage, then we will show you a replay from one of our previous sessions, one of the popular webinars that we previously hosted on our EAT community. And by the way, you can all go back and watch hundreds of webinars that we did in the past. Go to our eatcommunity.com website. If you're a member, you probably get our emails if you're subscribed to us. And if you haven't subscribed, you should consider becoming a member. If you are attending this webinar, chances are you're already a member of the EAT community. Or you'll have to log into your library and check what you own already. So if you already own one of the products that we have, like EAT Community, there are several of the products that we offer. So there will be, you'll see that in your library, you're going to see what you have as your product. And you can go and watch many videos that we did in the past, our guests and sessions and series, lessons, all kind of stuff. So do go to our EAT community. That's EAT community.com. So you'll go there and become a member. If you're not already a member, become a member and subscribe to our mailing list. And if you're a free member, free members have limited access. And if you want full access, become elite member, and pro members will have full access. So you have more options, more videos to watch, and you can watch these videos on your own pace. So anyhow, we're going to get started here in a few minutes. Once again, those who are here, I see a couple of note takers here. Welcome once again, and let's get started. So we're going to show you a replay of one of our guests. So we'll show you a replay from one of our previous webinar guests, which we will start right now. So enjoy.
So thank you so much for joining us. And please type any questions you have in the box and we will try to get to them. And Mark, you can interrupt at any time to ask those questions. So let's get started. We are so excited to speak with Jennings Ingram, who is a consultant in food forest creation and green lifestyles, as well as the creator of the Regenerative Revolution podcast. So welcome, Jennings. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Thank you so much for being here. So, for those that don't know, where in the world are you located and how long have you been there for?
So I'm currently living in Hawaii. I've been here for about three years, almost 3 years. Yeah, oh my gosh, I guess exactly 3 years as of 2 days ago, which is crazy. I moved here right before COVID happened, actually, which was an interesting whole process. And I've built up my business over here of consulting and helping people with their gardens. And I started the podcast here. And because of the history, I think, of Hawaii and the kind of consciousness here, which is very about like caring for the Aina, the earth, and obviously, you know, I mean, maybe not obviously, a lot of Hawaiian culture was completely based around like communal land stewardship, and their spirituality and everything totally woven into that. And you can really feel that here. So, yeah, that is where I'm at.
That's great. That sounds like a wonderful place to be. So when you're not working, consulting, what do you like to do for fun?
Well, a lot of what drew me here is the nature. So, definitely being in nature. I'm super into swimming and hiking and go and help friends in their gardens. And yeah, I've been doing some volunteer work for the past year, working on the Ram Dass Hanuman Maui, their temple gardens, and getting the food gardens going there, which has been really good. Seva, and it's been fun to be part of the satsang there. And yeah, so mostly those things, still nature things.
That's cool. I really like nature as well. And it's nice that you can volunteer and give back to something that you love so much. And that's kind of what your work does as well.
Yes.
Specific question to your region. Being in Hawaii, are there any benefits or constraints compared to other geographical locations regarding permaculture techniques that you use, such as physical or weather related, or anything interesting or specific unique to being in Hawaii?
Sure. Yeah. We have, you know, the soils are very young here. It's very volcanic. I mean, obviously, like it's a chain of volcanoes. So there there's definitely a challenge with like building up soils and things like that. Also, we get a lot of rain. Well, every island there's a wet side and a dry side, right? I'm on like the wetter side, so we get a lot of rain, and that can create challenges with like maintaining soil fertility, as well as we have we're currently having some hydrological issues, I guess you could say, with the way that the water is being used on the island, and experiencing drought and some fires. And there's kind of a long history of misuse of land and water resources here. So that's a challenging aspect, as well as I think yeah, I won't go into the whole history of it, but I'll leave that there. And maybe I could just give you guys an overview of kind of the arms of what I'm doing. So for people who aren't familiar,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the first thing that I do is I host a podcast. So it's called the Regenerative Revolution Podcast. And the goal when I started it, and still, is to really explore this movement, right? Because the regenerative movement it's like if you're familiar with the term of like energy descent culture, or the way that society has kind of been the way that a lot of modern society is now was built when we were extracting like more and more and more fossil fuel from the earth, basically, like on this upward trajectory of like more and more and more. And now we're in this place where it's becoming very apparent that these ways of being and of living, and endless extraction of fossil fuels, and kind of endlessly building things up and not caring for the soil and being separate from, for example, our food production, those things don't work. And if we continue in that way, humanity won't be able to survive on the planet anymore. And that can be grim to think about, but what's actually so refreshing, and the angle that I like to take with it, is it's a huge opportunity for doing things differently and doing things in a way that actually works with these biotic systems of the earth. There's some crazy birds, so you might hear them. So that is what the podcast is doing. We're highlighting people in this movement who are approaching this challenge in a way where they're able to have success, where they are, through whatever approach they're taking, they're able to make a large positive impact and inspire other people, and who are growing this kind of movement that is now essential as we transition our culture. So that's a podcast, and that's why I started it, and that's the consciousness that it's coming from. And it's so much fun. I love all my guests. We're on season 2 now, so it's still pretty new. But there's just endless amazing people to interview who are passionate about this work, who want to see us be in right relationship with each other and with the planet, and who are creatively making livelihoods in that way. And that's like the vibe that I really resonate with, and that's what's going on there. And so there's that. And then I also do like consulting. So for people who are wanting to transition their lifestyle in some type of way to their lifestyle, their landscape, whatever they have available to them. You know, everybody's situation is completely different. Or if they're wanting to create a business in the regenerative field, there's so much out there in terms of resources, information, people to get connected to. And so I kind of act as like just a conduit for people who are wanting to, do everything from grow their own food to maybe start a business in this arena. And that's really fun and really rewarding. And then I also, here in person on the island, I've got a group of women that I work with helping to create and maintain their food gardens. So that's really fun to see, you know, like when I think of gardens and food forests, it's like this process where we get to literally manifest, like have a vision in our head and like see it grow and come to life. And so that is my in-person work here, which has been so fun and really rewarding and just so amazing to be able to be part of feeding the community here. Okay, and then last thing is I help with social media and content creation for obviously for myself and my own work, but other businesses and groups who are part of this movement and are wanting to have a solid digital presence.
You stay very busy, and I've seen your podcast, and it's very thought-provoking and really great stuff. So yeah, so for those that may not know, would you mind describing, like giving a rough definition of regenerative movement or regenerative practices? You kind of touched on it.
Yes, totally. So like I was mentioning, the way, so not in all of history, right, but in modern history, like since the agricultural revolution, I guess, started happening, we have interacted with the earth in this way that is or increasingly, not the whole time, right? But increasingly, it's not reciprocal, right? So we're like taking, but we're not giving back. And when we think about nature, the way that things cycle, like even if you think about the water cycle, you know, it's like it's the full cycle, right? Or a bank account, like we withdraw and then we deposit, and we withdraw and then we deposit, and without the full like circular cycle, the system breaks down. And so that's what we're seeing in terms of a lot of the way that food is grown and the way that we are working with fossil fuel, for example. So instead of like, okay, this is a little bit extreme, but one example is like I read an article recently that described a lot of modern society as a death cult, which it sounds a little extreme, but in a lot of ways it kind of is, because you know, it's like we buy things that are produced in extractive ways, and then we use them up and then we throw them away or whatever, you know? And so in that way, we're just extracting, but we're not putting back. So when we talk about regeneration, we're talking about working with the full cycle, like replenishing the full cycle, the full water cycle, the full cycle of organic material, things like that. And it's a little broad, I suppose, but
That's great.
yeah, a concrete example would be composting, right? Like ideally you get food, ideally the food is like grown from your garden. So that's like you've received, that's like the uphill side of the cycle. You receive, and then you consume the food, and then what you don't eat, or I mean, ideally, like what you also extract, that gets composted and goes back into the soil so that the full cycle can happen. So it's not just endlessly pulling out from the soil and not giving back.
Right. So would you mind kind of going into more detail on the types of regenerative and sustainable permaculture farming practices that you're implementing and finding success with? Like, are you using animals or whatever you want to disclose?
So personally, at this moment, I don't have my own farm. I only help other people with their projects. So there's that. The most practiced like methodology that I've used here has been, it's called syntropic agroforestry. So it's where you are using, you're basically, okay, so there's different layers to a forest naturally, right? There's like the tallest canopy layers to the lowest understory, and there's like many different layers in between. And each tree and plant has a different need for sunlight and nutrients and things, and they're meant to live symbiotically together, like all the rest of the organisms on this planet. So when we work with syntropic agroforestry, we are thinking about each plant or each tree. We're planting forests basically of trees that are producing things that we need, a lot of, you know, fruit trees, timber trees, things like that. And staggering staggering's not the word, interplanting them in ways where their needs are being met, as well as managing them to make sure that we are increasing the soil health and the organic material in the soil. So that looks like a lot of, that looks like a lot of pruning, like specific pruning and mulching of like material from the site, and applying it to the soil in a way that builds it up over time. So that's one way.
I heard you mentioned one time in a podcast that somebody said it looks like you're just throwing trash all over the ground.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was referring to mulching, which is a great technique for a smaller area. So that's where, you know, you're trying to build up your soil, but you're also trying to kind of use what you have on hand and create gardens. So that was, like you start with a bunch of cardboard and put wood chips over it, basically. It's like pretty simple, but it's just a way to build soil that is, yeah, it doesn't require you to like rip up the ground or anything like that. It's like a, yeah. So yeah, and gosh, but yeah, I would love to work more with animals and things, but I haven't gotten to here. I did in the food forest in Asheville. That was really fun. And I, yeah, it's we also do like just normal, like fairly normal, like vegetable gardening and things here too, because people are into that and it helps to feed the community. And but I also try to emphasize working with and planting native plants like the Hawaiian root crop called kalo or taro, which is actually part of the creation story of humanity for the Hawaiians. And it's an amazing food plant. I should have like grabbed a leaf for you guys, but it's basically immortal. Like you can plant it, like you plant it once and then you harvest, like the root is the part that you harvest. And when you harvest the root, you cut off the top and replant it. And you can do that like basically forever. It's really amazing.
How do you eat taro? Taro.
So you cook it, you pressure cook it or boil it for, if you have a pressure cooker, it's it's less than an hour. If you're just straight up boiling it, it's like more than an hour because it has oxalates in it, so you can't eat it raw. It will like destroy your body. But so you cook it and then you can make it, then it becomes kind of like a potato. And you can make it into like burgers or mashed potatoes or like, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Safe to say that taro is your favorite plant that you find most enjoyable, or your favorite crop?
I actually am more of a fan of cassava because I just really like it, and it grows in really gnarly soils. It's a root crop from, I think it's from Brazil. I don't know exactly where it's from, but it's a root crop that will grow even in really bad soil, like with barely any care. And another name for it is manioca. It's what tapioca is made out of, if you're familiar with that. Like if you ever have little curls. And it grows these like, kind of just looks like a tall stick, but it has these like huge roots that grow under the ground. Like they're almost like massive potatoes, and they are super delicious, and they're really amazing plants, and they're super easy to propagate as well, which is another thing that I think is really important, is like things that are easy to grow, that you start seed every year, perennial foods.
Okay. All right. So kind of jumping backwards a little bit, could you please describe your background and how you got into this line of work?
Yeah, totally. So when I was done with college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I've always been very artistic, and that is probably why I'm decent at the whole social media thing, because I'm just very like visually oriented. And so I decided that I would start, my first business was it was an art business where I was like making these paintings and selling them, and that was really fun at first. And then it just became this thing where I was like, oh man, like I'm inside all the time. I feel like the people, like I wasn't necessarily working with like the client base of people that I really vibed with, And so then I just kind of got depressed, and I was like, God, like, I can't do this anymore. And so then I was just like wandering around online, and I saw the term food forest, which I hadn't come across in college. And I was like, what is this? And so I started to research and become interested. And I realized that the way that, like, if you've ever seen the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, like where they're coming out, there's that scene and they're coming out into his like whole chocolate forest kind of, and where they're like going around eating everything, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And that was really like, it really made an impression on me. And then when I came across like food forestry as a thing that people did, I was really amazed and like, oh my gosh, this is why I saw this movie. I feel like it's because this always stuck with me, and you can actually create this in real life, and like, why didn't I know about this? And so I just became really fascinated. It was just one of those things, like, I don't know if you guys ever have moments where something will just happen, or like something will happen, you'll meet someone, or you'll go somewhere and you just like feel intuitively like there's something for me here. And that's how I felt when I found this work. And I mean, I didn't even know it was like something I could do, right? I didn't even know it was something that I could ever make any type of career out of, or that other people would be interested in, but I was interested in. So yeah, I just started to kind of like ravenously study it and watch all the Bill Mollison lectures that I could, got into permaculture, which I don't actually describe myself as like a permaculturist now, because permaculture is like, it's just a little limiting, like it's, and also somewhat controversial depending on who you talk to. And my goal is just to help humanity get back on track with working with nature in a sane way, growing food, restoring the natural cycles. That's it. I don't feel the need, like, I don't need to attach any type of particular labels to it, although I do like food forest, Yeah, so I started to experiment in my own yard and kind of like poke around, see if other people would let me experiment in their yards too. And that was fun. And then I decided to take my permaculture design course, which I took at this place called Earth Haven Eco Village, which is outside Asheville. Amazing place. They've got great courses and such amazing people that I met there who I'm still friends with to this day. And then I convinced basically one of my teachers to take me on as an apprentice. So I would go around with him to all his consultations, going to people's properties and who wanted to start doing this type of work. And I would go with him and I would like take all these notes of everything he said to people to recommend to them. Then I would type them up and send them later in photos and stuff. So I really got to learn a lot that way. Yeah, and then was kind of doing my own thing, did a little bit in the mycology world, and then got invited to come to Hawaii for an aquaponics internship, which I was really interested in. And once I arrived here, it just became really clear that I was supposed to move here. Like I had all these dreams and just things just really lined up perfectly for me to be able to come here. And so that was, and then once I was here, COVID happened, all sorts of things happened, but basically I was able to build up my business to where it's at now. And I'm not like, I'm still pretty early on in this. I just turned 30 last month, and I'm definitely still. What?
Happy birthday.
Oh, thanks. So I'm still kind of, yeah, I feel like I'm definitely still evolving, like as a person, evolving my business. But I'm really thrilled that I've been able to make it this far and able to help people and help the planet. Yeah, it's a bit of a hybrid, right? I think a lot of people who get into this work maybe go, I don't know, like start their own farm or things like that. And I would like to do that at some point in the future, but um, for now, my life is kind of like this hybrid of uh, in-person and online work, like, which I like. I mean, I couldn't just, just do things on the ground. I would get bored because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I have the podcast.
To mix it up and not have to sit in an office all day too, probably, right?
Literally would lose my mind. I could never do.
Well,
Yeah.
that's an interesting story, and I appreciate you sharing it. Cool that you started out as an artist and you have that background that you can apply to everything.
Yeah, I think it's been helpful. Because like we were before you started recording, like there's not too many people who like walk in both worlds of like, um, yeah, like being able to work with the online world as well as being part of the whole earthy side of things. So it's cool to walk in both.
Yep, and you do have a great social media presence. I really enjoy your Instagram, so that's cool. So do you want to answer this kind of random question that is, what is a negative thing in your life that at the time seemed horrible, but the outcome of it has been amazingly good?
Ooh. You know, well, I guess the example I'll give, it'll be a farming example. When I first started getting into permaculture and learning about all these things, we've got a little family farm in North Carolina, and I was very excited to start using those principles and to start planting orchards. And I had like so many plans that I drew up for converting like some of the cow pastures to permaculture systems, right? Which honestly, like at that time, I didn't really know enough to be designing those systems anyway. So maybe it's all works out the way it's supposed to, right? So I came up with all these plans, went over them with my family, and we were gonna buy all the fruit trees and start putting them in, and I was really excited. And then there was like a really bad miscommunication with one of my family members who had recently started to take over managing the land after my grandparents had officially like stepped down from that role. And so what happened was the agricultural extension agent ended up recommending for our fields to be treated with these very strong herbicides because there were a certain amount of weeds and things coming up, which I was studying like, oh my God, it's because compaction and we need to like rotate the cows differently and all these, it was like making sense to me. But our communication wasn't good enough to where we got on the same page with that before the field got treated with these horrible herbicides. So when that happened, I was really devastated. It was just really sad because it was like, wow, for the next 8+ years, literally nothing can grow here but grass. This is really gnarly. So that was really sad and difficult and still is. But because of that, I was open to do something like go to Hawaii and step into this lifestyle here and start to build my business here. So in a way, and from that, there's been incredible personal growth, incredible community here, and a lot that wouldn't have happened if I had just stayed in North Carolina. So there's that.
Yeah. Well, that's a good story. So what is one lesson your job has taught you that, or your profession, that you think everyone should learn? Communication was a theme from the last story.
Oh my God, communication. Yeah. Gosh, there's so many. I think a lot of, I guess the way I would distill it would be, we need to look at the whole picture of what's happening in any situation. So especially if we're approaching things, trying to make things better. So for example, yeah, in the example of my family farm, like there's the knowledge, there's the resources to get the trees, there's people to help, but yeah, that communication element and that ability to have that that info flow wasn't there. And so because of that, the system doesn't function, right? And I think even on a consumer level, for people who are thinking about, if you're even just going to the grocery store, like where am I going to get my food from this week? If you think about what's the whole cycle, right? Like if you are going and buying some miscellaneous like turkey in a package, say, it's like, okay, what's the whole life cycle of that, right? It's like, there's a lot of different intervals of things that are likely causing harm, right? Like the way that the birds are raised, like their life cycle, the way that the workers working with them are treated and paid. A lot of this, there's a lot of like social justice that comes into this work when we think about workers not being compensated fairly, not having good living conditions, the use of like immigrant labor, and importing like the whole chocolate industry, for instance. Like, I don't even get me started, but it's just we have to consider like the welfare of all of the whole cycle of life when we make decisions. And yeah, I feel like communication is such a huge theme with that too, because a lot of why people don't know about these things is because there isn't clear communication about them, right? There's like these companies that have so much money who are putting forth their narrative of like, oh, and then there's not adequate communication of like, oh, this is, or education of like, oh, this is actually the full picture of like what you're buying. It's releasing this much carbon and it's creating this much social impact. And yeah, so I think thinking about the picture of things more fully.
And that's kind of what you are doing with your podcast, is you're putting that alternative narrative like out there for people to access, and it's free too. The podcast is, so there's the education component of what you're doing too.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Education is huge. If we're not even aware that things can be structured differently, then they won't ever be structured differently, right? Like education. And I see that too in like the people that I've like, part of the reason why I'm doing this the way that I am is there's so many amazing people who I've met through this movement and this work who are like, so they're just on it, and they have such a broad understanding of everything, but they their reach is quite limited and the amount of people who can learn from them is quite limited. And because they, will only teach in-person classes or will barely ever teach at all or only within their, biographical region or things like that. So part of this is to try to amplify this work so that it's accessible and appealing and can be, present in the narrative of culture.
Mm-hmm. So another question, what would you say is the biggest obstacle preventing others from switching from conventional agricultural practices to more regenerative and sustainable ones? And I know this is a loaded question, but take a stab.
So don't have a ton of experience like helping large farms to switch their organizations, right? Like, so it's not something that I'm super qualified to speak on because I haven't lived, that. I would be really interested in trying to being part of that. And I've talked to people who do those types of things. I mean, I think a lot of it that I've heard of is like the money, right? It's like, because when you switch based on like, this is my understanding of things that I've heard, not from my personal experience, but when you switch from the conventional to the regenerative organic cover cropping, using compost, these things like, or even switching over, for example, to tree crops, which are longer lived but take several years to have a yield. There's this kind of gap in years, like where you're not making money so much, and so for a lot of people, that makes it not feasible, really, to switch, because under capitalism, we all have to continually, pay our bills and generate money, or most of us would like starve, right? So it's an interesting thing trying to bring this work together with the work of, or with the under the conditions of capitalism. That's a huge, and honestly, what I've seen is it means that this work is mostly accessible to people who have more resources. Doing this type of thing is accessible to people who have more resources and who are motivated to do this type of thing, which is sad, but.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So, would you want to share some of what you're doing with the women's gardens, or are they farms or gardens?
Food forest, like a hybrid. Like most of them have areas where we have like tree crops and then more of like a vegetable garden. Yeah, I could share about one project that I've been working on together with other people, right? Like that's an important thing to note, is that this is a team sport, right? This isn't like someone alone doing these things. It takes manpower, and it takes coordination, and it takes resources, which is again, why it's not accessible to everyone, even though it should be. I mean, just even land is accessible to a lot of people. But anyways, so we started about, over 2 years ago with just what she had, working together with some other people and basically planning to transition. It's about 4 acres. But we're not doing all, I think one of them is like, or the area is probably like, I don't know, an acre total. Together with my partner at the time, we put together a kind of like a layout, a game plan for moving the system into a more productive direction. adding a bunch more fruit trees, and she's got a family, which is really amazing because, her kids get to grow up with this amazing food forest garden. Like it's kind of like a living temple, sort of. Like that's the vibe, is it's very like sacred. And over the past 2 years, the progress has just been incredible. I mean, I wish I had images to show you guys, but it's just went from a couple fruit trees and vetiver pretty much to like so many perennial greens, tons of different fruit trees, areas for growing veggies. She's also really into medicinal herbs, so they're doing a lot of medicinal herbs, and putting a new part of like this trail system. And again, like it's a team effort. Like I've just been a small part of that, but it's been so amazing, and it's just so gorgeous. The way that nature responds when we actually work with her in the way that she wants to be worked with is just like the most gorgeous thing. And they've got so much food now. She is always giving me cassava, and some of the fruit trees are starting to fruit, and it's just a really amazing transition to have been part of. So that's my favorite project.
That is awesome. I would love to see it. Do you have pictures of that on your Instagram or anywhere?
No, everybody feels different about sharing their work, and so it's important to always, respect. And if people don't want things photographed, they won't, and that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, at least you get to experience it in person.
Yeah.
All right. So, how about what a typical workday looks like for you?
Sure. Yeah. So usually, so it depends. It's different every day of the week, but a general rhythm is the first half of the day, I will be at a property doing, gardening or picking out plants or designing new areas or whatever it is. First half of the day is like on somebody's property. And then the second half of the day, I will be working on either the podcast or helping some of these other organizations with their social media or doing consulting. So it's kind of like a 50-50 type of a rhythm.
That sounds like a nice balance.
It is a good balance.
Yeah. So how did COVID or the pandemic, how did that affect you in your business?
Well, when COVID happened, I had only been here on the island for about 6 months, and I was living at this permaculture farm here. And so in a way, it was a good place to go through those early stages of COVID when, no one left their house, and it was really scary because we were together in our little pod in the jungle, and we had a ton of food plants all around us. So it was actually like a protected little bubble. But at that time, I wasn't working. I didn't have this other stuff going. The structure that we're talking about has just emerged in the past 2 years. So during that time, I was just there, basically just on the farm with everybody kind of like just waiting to see what would happen. We didn't even have like regular internet or anything.
Oh, wow. I just quarantined together.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
So, how about what goals do you have for the next 5-10 years? Anything you want to share?
Yeah. Well, business-wise, I'm definitely going to continue to grow the podcast and to grow my consulting services. And for anyone listening, just know that I'm available for helping people transition to a more green lifestyle, whatever that looks like for you. If you just want to start a vegetable garden with your family and you're just like feeling overwhelmed by all the material out there and you want help of where to start so that your kids can have fresh food, or if you are more entrepreneurial and you want to have a business in this growing area. I know a lot of people who are in this, and I have a lot of resources I can connect you with. And then, I'm also really wanting to bring on more aligned sponsors for the podcast. I've also started working with specific brands who are aligned with this mission, so having more of those partnerships. And I'd also, so that's the business area. And then for my personal life, I'd like to get some land and get like an off-grid house going, but like a nice one, and hopefully, live there with my family and
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Use some eco bricks to make your house.
Yeah, I should. I want to. I mean, there's plenty of that material in the world, so might as well use it.
I had never heard of that, but I thought that was a great blog post where you said 3 things to do to be more environmentally friendly from an apartment.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of an eco brick, and I was like, that's awesome. I would love to build something out of those.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the material is going to be here with us. For anybody who doesn't know, an eco brick is like a plastic water bottle stuffed full of plastic, like as dense as you can. And it makes a really good building material with this plastic that's going to be with us here on the planet for the rest of our lives anyway. So we might as well like do something useful with it.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of on that same theme, is there any literature or publication or podcast that you'd recommend to somebody interested in starting or transitioning to a food forest, more environmentally green operation? Any sort of resources?
Sure, yeah, there's a million. So it really depends on where people are coming from. Like it really like everybody's goals, whatever someone's goals are going to determine like the resources that they need to be connected with, which is why I offer like the individualized consultation sessions. And I would say a great place to start would be like if you're just wanting to get into this, you barely like know anything, but you're really intrigued. I would just start with the book Gaia's Garden. It's by Toby Hemingway, and it's a really good intro to just designing like a small scale system that will feed you and work with nature, and just like introduces you to kind of some of these like introductory principles. And it's like a nice read. I think it's a beautiful book too. And then if you are wanting to learn more about some of these career paths, things like that, I would go to the podcast and go to this, like listen to the episodes for if there's someone who's like you're interested in their stuff. Like we have one where this guy started this whole thing around like kelp farming. We have Tree Jenny, she's really amazing. She started this whole nonprofit planting carbon sequestering trees in Costa Rica. And so I would go to the podcast and listen if you want, or even just look at the show notes. Just read the show notes because all the show notes have a ton of resources in them that I put there.
That's awesome. It's a great resource. And I have a friend that is interested in starting a seaweed farm. So kelp, not sure kelp and seaweed are the same thing, but I think they might be. So
yeah, I mean, they're in the same genre. And depending on your like where you're at in the world, it might not be kelp that's the most appropriate seaweed for you to grow, but it's all needed.
Okay.
For your friend, I would check out this organization, Greenwave.
Mhm.
They have like an incubator program where they help to get new seaweed farmers set up. And I forgot what the investment is, but it's like a reasonable investment, and they get you totally set up with everything you need. And they even have like buyers set up for your first crops. Like you have a guarantee.
Wow.
Yeah. So Greenwave would be.
Yeah, I wonder if he's come across that yet. 'Cause that sounds awesome.
Yeah, definitely hook him up with that one.
Cool. So, getting towards the end here a little bit. Do we have any questions, Mark?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions. So,
Okay.
yeah, I want to know if tell me about some of your guests on podcasts, like people that you think stand out, or someone special that you had on your show.
I mean, everybody stands out. That's why I asked them, right?
Mhm.
We've
Well,
got we've got an upcoming episode. I think it's going to be the next one that I release with this guy Zach Weiss and his organization called Elemental Ecosystems, and they are doing this really important work of regenerating the water cycle. So a lot of people don't understand that a lot of the drought and flood and fire cycles that we're experiencing on the planet right now are because of the disturbance of the water cycle, and like the way that the whole water cycle isn't functioning the way that it needs to due to human disturbance. But the good news is that there are pretty simple fixes for a lot of it, and so Elemental Ecosystems, Zach, they are doing phenomenal work getting people on restoring the whole water cycle. And we go into, like, he's got a whole training that you can do, which is amazing. And it's also, and you can create a career in that. Another amazing person in that industry or area is Brad Lancaster, who you guys have probably heard of. And I haven't had him on the show yet, but I definitely am going to. So he's got trainings, but we also go into things that people can just do from home, like, and that's going to be the one that the interview that I release this month. So when you just asked me, that's what came to mind.
Awesome. And can you also tell us about some of your influences and why they had an impact on you um, in what you're doing right now?
Yeah. I guess, how do I say this? Astrologically, some people might say it's the Aquarius in my chart, but a lot of it, I think, has to do with seeing so much of, like, I don't have, like, from my childhood or anything, like, super clear role models of, like, people doing what I want to do, but I did have clues of, like, our family farm growing up, like getting to spend so much time out there, like me knowing that I need to be in nature a lot, right? And that I really value that. And then seeing the way that my grandma would always work with the plants and things. I love, like, she was amazing like that. And then also seeing on the flip side, like other people in my family pursuing other careers that I wouldn't want, right? Like, or people in my life, like, who are, for example, like spending their whole life working in a hospital or something like that, which is totally amazing and super needed. We need these oncologists and these people, but it was kind of an influence of like, it was kind of a combination of push and pull, right? Like I feel pulled towards these things and I feel pushed away from these things. And so how do I create a livelihood and a lifestyle for myself where I am able to like walk this path that's aligned with these things? And I feel honestly like a weirdo sometimes because there's not that many, I don't know, it's like, I feel like it's still a growing field, and it's still like when I tell people what I do, they're intrigued, but it's also like they haven't heard anybody say that before. So it can be a lot of like emotional labor to like educate people. Yeah, so I guess kind of a combination of things. And then when I found permaculture, I was like, oh, this is much more it. And then I realized permaculture isn't totally it, or just being a farmer isn't totally it, but I can like weave these things together. Hopefully that's
Awesome. Yeah, I could go for hours, but we're running out of time. So, Erin, why don't you take over?
Okay. Yep, it is probably hard to be on the cusp of something that's new, but you know, somebody's got to do it. So,
new, but it's old. Like humanity
True.
used to live in symbiosis with nature, or we wouldn't even have made it this far, right? Like
mhm.
the original people of the United States, for example, before it was the United States, like America, what we now know as America, the Native Americans, like had such amazing ways of working with the ecosystems and the earth, and there's so much culture that was based around like, you know, ancient Minoan culture, for example, based totally around nature and the worship of the goddess being the life force that is embodied by women and by nature. And so it's new now, but it's old.
Right, that's true. And I really like what you said in, I think it was your first episode, when you're introducing yourself, and you said that when you first learned that you could be a positive impact or a positive part of nature, that was a big realization to you. And I really like thinking about it in that way too, because usually it's the